2 years ago, I spoke at your conference and I made the statement that there's 500 ounces of silver in a Tomahawk cruise missile. And the man came up to me after, and he was there again this year. I saw him, but last year he said, I've been involved in the Tomahawk program. In fact, after I came home, he sent me this, and he said, I actually helped design the Tomahawk missile. And he said, I'm not sure about that amount. I'll get back to you. He was at your conference again this year, which everyone should check out. It's really one of the only two conferences I go to. In fact, there are only two. It's yours and Rick Rule's down here in Boca. And he said to me, you were right. I'll be damned that there's between 400 and 500 ounces, or I think he said 15 and 16 or 14 and 15 kilos of silver in every Tomahawk. And yet all of this military applications, all the military applications are not listed in the Silver Institute's numbers. And, if there's 500 ounces in one Tomahawk cruise missile, think of all the missiles that are flying all over the place. And ask yourself, is that maybe the reason why you have a couple of commercial banks short the way they are, naked short, to the tune of almost 1 billion ounces, Bank of America, in silver? I mean, how dumb is that? It's as dumb as a mud wall when you see India importing almost 500 million ounces in the last 2.5 years. And we have commercial banks that are naked short.
In a recent discussion, precious metals expert Andy Schechtman highlights a concerning trend in the silver market. With over half of the United States passing legislation to recognize legal tender coins for all debts, public and private, including property taxes, the demand for silver is on the rise. However, Schechtman points out a significant contradiction. While India has imported nearly 500 million ounces of silver in the past 2.5 years, commercial banks, notably Bank of America, are reportedly shorting silver to the tune of almost 1 billion ounces.
I mean, if you take a look at the ETFs, it's falling at a 45-degree angle as the price is going higher. So the institutions have been right there along with the NVIDIA crowd and the Bitcoin crowd. And then there's a lot that have been just resting their money, earning 5+% in short-term treasuries. All of that I get. I mean, the run up in AI and the run up in Bitcoin has been spectacular. And the safety found in short-term treasuries after 20 years of no interest rates at all, that's taken a lot of money out of the system. The institutional investor in the U.S. is ignoring gold and silver completely. Take a look at the U.S. Mint numbers on Gold Eagles, and it's the lowest amount they've sold since 2019. So we have seen a lot of very large purchases. Look, like I said, we added 14,000 clients when Silicon Bank failed. And right now we're not seeing the massive public, run into gold. Like our mutual friend, Rick Rule, always says that there's a 0.5% allocation across the entire financial matrix, from Joe and Jane Sixpack to the Harvard Endowment Fund. If he's right, and it sure seems that way to me. I mean, look at the ETFs going straight down in terms of people are selling. Now, when I said that to Bill Holter, my friend, he said, well, a lot of that is the big money using share redemption out of the ETFs to take possession in an opaque manner, not as transparent as it is if they stood for delivery on COMEX. And he's right to a degree. But what I see is the public in mass largely ignoring this, including the institutionals. And again, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but to me, this is the big sovereign wealth funds and the central banks that are holding this market up in and of themselves, it's a huge contrarian indicator when you realize the American public is asleep at the switch and the price keeps going higher. Yet you read articles that the Chinese public is on a massive buying spree. So, where does it all go? I don't know, but I do think that the American public will be late to the party because they're really in large representation. They're not there right now, but a lot of older folks, 70s and 80s, very wealthy, coming to us and saying, I cannot stand what I see happening in this country. It's not the country I remember. The lawlessness, the open borders, the question on elections, the question on judicial system, all of this stuff was never, ever a part of the American fabric. And all of a sudden, lo and behold, it is. I'm out. I don't like what I see. And we have a lot of very large orders, but not the number of orders and the numbers in participation that one would expect at all-time highs in gold. In fact, quite to the contrary, it's eerily muted. And I think that is a contrarian indicator when you talk about where this could really go once the public jumps in. And we're not there yet. I think silver's the value of a generation. I mean, I do. You got all the folks in Canada now trying to petition Ottawa to change it from industrial to a strategic metal. You have 2 years ago, I spoke at your conference and I made the statement that there's 500 ounces of silver in the Tomahawk cruise missile. And a man came up to me after, and he was there again this year. I saw him, but last year he said, you know, I've been involved in the Tomahawk program. In fact, after I came home, he sent me this, and he said, I actually helped design the Tomahawk missile. And he said, I'm not sure about that amount. I'll get back to you. He was at your conference again this year, which everyone should check out. It's really one of the only two conferences I go to. In fact, there are only two. It's yours and Rick Rule's down here in Boca. And he said to me, you were right. I'll be damned that there's between 400 and 500 ounces, or I think he said 15 and 16 or 14 and 15 kilos of silver in every Tomahawk. And yet all of this military applications, all the military applications are not listed in the Silver Institute's numbers. And, you know, if there's 500 ounces in one Tomahawk cruise missile, think of all the missiles that are flying all over the place and ask yourself, is that maybe the reason why you have a couple of commercial banks short the way they are, naked short, to the tune of almost 1 billion ounces, Bank of America, in silver? I mean, how dumb is that? It's as dumb as a mud wall when you see India importing almost 500 million ounces in the last 2.5 years. And we have commercial banks that are naked short. So when you talk about opportunity, to me, the real opportunity on every metric, on every level, is in silver. And with, I don't know, over half of the United States, the states in the country having passed legislation or have in front of their state legislature now to call legal tender coins currency for all debts, public and private, including paying your property tax. I think there's an awful lot to be said for the American Eagle. It would be my number one choice, but only second, you know, a very close second would be the Canadian Maple Leaf. I think in the end, it's about the number of ounces that matter, and you want to get as much as you can. But these states are proving that the form in which it is in is relevant too. You get more silver buying rounds or bars, but you don't have the utility or potential transactional ability that you would find in the U.S. if you ignore things like junk silver, which would be dimes, quarters, half dollars minted prior to 65, or silver eagles or maple leafs. Most of these states read any legal tender coin issued by a sovereign mint. So it would be the Canadian Mint or the Australian Mint. It doesn't matter. A few of them focus on the U.S. Eagle. And I guess living in the States, that would be my top choice. But I would say, if you know, value-wise, the Maple Leaf's a better value at a couple dollars less per ounce. Either way, I don't think you can go wrong. So yeah, I think silver's the value.
In continuation, Andy Shechtman emphasizes the enduring value of gold in uncertain times, noting the Bank of International Settlements' reclassification of gold as the only other Tier 1 reserve asset. Despite silver's potential to outperform gold, Shechtman expresses a preference for gold investment, citing its historical resilience and the calculated speculation surrounding silver. Advocating for American Eagle gold and silver coins, Shechtman underscores their liquidity and flexibility. Moreover, he highlights the growing list of U.S. states recognizing legal tender coins, portraying it as a pushback against fiscal irresponsibility and depreciating currency.
And ultimately, when the music stops, however, I think the place largely to be is gold. There is no other reason that the most sophisticated and influential bank on the planet, the Bank of International Settlements, would have reclassified gold as the only other Tier 1 reserve asset on the planet if they didn't have big things in store for it. And realizing there's a 90% correlation in movement for all of history between the two, silver will probably outperform gold. And it's too hard for me to ignore. If I had one trade and only one trade to make, I'm buying gold. And I know there are a lot of people who will disagree with that. If I had two, I would buy copious amounts of silver. And when the ratio, which is 85 to 1-ish right now, all it had to do is hit its 200-year average of 42 to 1. It's a double. It's coming out of the ground, according to our mutual friend Keith Newmeyer, at 7 to 1. It's the value, it's the trade of a generation. It's a calculated speculation. But if I were just going to be asked by people in the States, what do I buy? If I had my choice, I would buy 1 ounce American Eagle gold, 1 ounce American Eagle silver, and you will never, ever have a problem with liquidity or flexibility. So those would be my number one choices, followed by those coins issued by the RCM, the Royal Canadian Mint.
in the
I
U.S.
think
right now?
I think it's 24, 25. I mean, it's a growing list.
So like
I mean,
half.
last I checked, I can ramble off a bunch of them. It was Texas and Utah, and Nevada and Wyoming and Alaska and Idaho and Missouri and Kansas and North Carolina has it in front of the legislature. Arkansas. I mean, it's a growing list, and I think it's something that speaks to the American spirit, pushing back against the ridiculous monetary policy of the Fed and the irresponsible fiscal policy of the government, where we're addicted to spending and we're broken, we're insolvent. And by taking and holding US dollars that are depreciating, they tell us they're only falling by 3.5% annualized. We know that's not true. John Williams of Shadow Stats would say, no, it's more like 11 or 12%. And he just uses the metrics by which they used to measure inflation. So any way you look at it, holding dollars is a losing proposition. And so I think these states are saying, hey, let's give our constituents a fair chance here. And I never thought I'd see it, but it is happening indeed.
In today's discussion, Andy Schectman delved into the intricate dynamics of the precious metals market, shedding light on the contrasting behaviors of institutional investors and the general public. Despite the current trend favoring ETFs and short-term treasuries, Schectman emphasizes the overlooked potential in gold and silver, highlighting the growing recognition of legal tender coins by various U.S. states. As we navigate uncertain economic landscapes, Schectman's insights provide valuable perspective on wealth preservation and investment strategies. Thank you for tuning in.